Welcome into another edition of the Territory Talk podcast, the official podcast of the Florida Panthers, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. Doug Plagens, Jameson Olive here with you as always, an off-season check-in edition. We have a couple things to go over from the craziness of NHL free agency concerning the Panthers and other teams across the National Hockey League. So we'll look back at some of that. Our last edition, we left you closing in on free agency, and we said that we would kind of break down the way things looked after the dust settled in a little bit, and that's where we are right now. And we're coming to you from, for old time's sake, the Sin Bin here at Amarant Bank Arena, where if you've been with us for the last... Geez, Jameson, when were we doing episodes regularly
3 years ago,
here?
maybe three years ago?
Yeah, if you've been with us since circa 2020, 21, 22, that era, this was where we used to do a lot of the episodes. And, well, for old time's sake, here we are back here in the Sin Bin. Feels good. Feels like we never left, Jameson.
Yeah, some construction going on here at the arena. We're a mobile studio, so
yes.
We just find a quiet corner and start recording. That's
yes, by mobile studio, I mean we have equipment that fits in a thing about the size of a lunchbox, and we can just pretty much take it anywhere. Again, Doug Plagens, Jameson Olive here with you. And again, going through some of the roster moves, some of the signings. There have been some trades, things across the National Hockey League we'll touch on. We're going to focus mostly on the Panthers and mostly on the teams that you see a lot, those within the Atlantic Division and the Eastern Conference here. And we'll have lots of time to talk about some of these things over the course of the offseason. If there's a topic you want to bring to the table or a question you'd like to raise or something you'd like to bring to our attention, at Doug Plagens, at Jameson Coop on the Twitter X platform. You can always engage us there. But starting things off, Jameson, since the last time we spoke to the folks here on Territory Talk, news around the Panthers that we haven't gotten to. Mackie Samoskevich, new contract for him. Also, Jeff Petry, veteran defenseman, signed by the Panthers, and he figures to fit into the mix coming up this season.
Yeah, so Petry kind of happened right after we recorded our last episode.
Yeah, I think you hit the button to stop recording, and that pretty much that news came down.
And then Mackie was just the other day. So I guess we'll start with Petry just being the oldest signing. And you look at that deal, and that's another guy that I thought, kind of like Nate Schmidt, who I thought eventually would become a Panther. I thought it would have happened earlier, but here we are. He's now a Panther.
He grew up in my area.
Yeah, he's a Michigander like yourself.
But his dad was an '84 World Series champion with the Tigers, Dan.
Really?
Yes.
What position did he play?
He was pitcher. Pitcher in the majors for a long time.
Was he a reliever?
And he's currently on the Tigers broadcasts.
Really?
Yep.
I knew none of this.
Yep.
That's awesome. So now we know why we were talking to Jeff Petry and his oldest son Boyd, who had that viral video when they were at the Panthers game when he was with the Canadians, talking about how he loves the Panthers and was rooting for the Panthers. He's older now. That was like 5 years ago. I think he's 9 now. But he was saying, Jeff was telling us that he's so excited because now he gets to play baseball year-round in South Florida. You don't have to shut things down for winter. So that makes sense now. Now I see why they're also a baseball family. Thank you, Doug. You always have the good Michigan intel.
Yep, he's great on the air, too. Great on the air and still a favorite in Detroit and was a member of the 1984 World Series championship team.
But you look at the signing, and I think you and I talked about this isn't so much, I think, the same as the OEL signing or the Nate Schmidt signing. Those were two guys that were still like in their early-ish 30s, looking for kind of a reset. A career reset to then pivot into that maybe final long-term big money deal where you look at Petry. Petry's already 37, turning 38 in December. He's a guy that's got almost 1,000 games. I think he's 19 away. He's in 981 right now. He's seen it all, done it all, played for some great organizations. He wants a cup, Doug. He really wants a cup. That's why he's here. I think he's at close to the minimum I think he signed for. And he's a guy that I think can help the Panthers. And you look at, their bottom pair this upcoming season. Obviously, you lose Nate Schmidt to the Mammoth, and we love Nate Schmidt. We're so excited he got that deal.
And Vitek Vanacek goes to the Mammoth as well.
Vitek goes
to join Kevin Stenlund.
So we enjoy,
a little bit of an alumni team.
We like so many people in Utah now. Just love that group.
Be a fun team to see.
They did lose Nick Bugstad though. He left Utah.
Yes.
So we almost had another guy we love in Utah. But yes, all our favorite people are going to Utah, and that's just fine with us. But you look at Petry, and he's a guy that I think can still give you the minutes. I think he can still give you obviously the veteran experience in the room, but you look at the way the Panthers play, I still like his rush defense. I still think he can be solid on that blue line, especially in those sheltered bottom pair minutes. That being said,
He might be able to give you a second power play time, too.
He might, especially because that was, Nate Schmidt was doing that. Someone's going to take that spot
Second
now.
unit power play time.
And the way the Panthers are running PP1 in the playoffs, I mean, Ekblad and Jones are both on PP1. Who's running PP2? Maybe it's Jeff Petry. Maybe it's Uvis Balinskis, who we've seen do it in the past. So you look at the bottom pair for the Panthers now, and you got Cooley, who's obviously there. He's going to be a rock. And how good does that Cooley contract look now?
Oh, it's great.
Just knowing you have Cooley there every year for, what was it, a little over $1 million, I think it was. Great deal for Cooley, great deal for the Panthers. Maybe one of your most reliable guys these days. You know exactly what you're getting from Cooley every single shift. Cost certainty is wonderful, especially in this era of cap management. But you got Uvis, you got Cooley, and you got Petry, and you look at those guys, and all three of those guys are going to see time this season. And obviously, I think Cooley's probably the most locked in, just because Cooley's a veteran, seen it all, done it all. But I expect all those guys to get playing time this year. All those guys are going to play important minutes. But as I look kind of at that bottom pair, Doug, it just makes me think once again, as I kind of go big picture NHL, and you talk about why are the Panthers so good? Why are they able to win back-to-back cups? Why are they now the toast of the NHL? And I've read there's even been more articles about taxes lately, and the amount of hoops people are jumping through just to try and get like a couple solid points out of it while ignoring a bunch of other points is pretty impressive, but it's giving people things to write about this offseason. But what people don't talk enough about is you look at Florida's fourth line from last year. So I'm talking Greer, Gadjevich, and Nosek. Combined, those guys are making, I think, about $3 million, maybe less, about $3 million. You look at their bottom pair from the playoffs last year. You got Nate Schmidt, you got Dmitry Kulikov. Combined, those guys are making $2 million or less. $5 total mil for those positions.
That's why the Panthers have been able to lock 10 key players in through at least 2030. That's why. It's not because of taxes and external economic factors. It's because the Panthers have a lot of smart contracts on the books.
The Panthers, like I said, this upcoming season, no matter who's on that bottom pair, whether it's Uvis, whether it's Petry, whether it's Cooley, all three of those guys Cooley makes just over $1 million. The other two make less than $1 million in this upcoming season. There are going to be a lot of teams in the NHL this season that have a guy on their bottom pair making $4 million.
Or a guy on their fourth line. They're waiting for his contract to run out.
Yeah.
Because it's a bad deal.
And like I said, the Panthers don't go hunting for those bad contracts. They don't hand out those bad contracts. You know what they do? They go out, they find Nate Schmidt, they find OEL, they find Jeff Petry, and say, we think this guy's going to be just fine. With what we're asking them, they know what they're asking them. They're not paying him for name value. They're not paying him for what he's done over those 981 career games. They're paying for exactly what they think they can get out of him, and they think it's going to be valuable. So,
and he's a guy that wants it.
Yeah.
He's done everything else except win a Stanley Cup.
That's the funny thing, especially when you run it back the way the Panthers have this year. Last year, you obviously had, not half the room, but a third of the room of new guys coming in, hungry for that first cup. This year, Doug, almost every guy in that locker room's got at least one ring now. You need a Jeff Petry to come in there. You need that
to be the win it for that guy.
You need the win it for that guy. They're all looking around like, oh man, I don't need to win it for him. I don't need to win it for him. And Jeff Petry's right there, like, I know, let's win it for Jeff Petry. You do, and you know what? That matters though. That matters. I didn't think about it until just now, but yes, they have now a win it for that guy.
And even in a sense, Brad Marchand was a win it for that guy because he got a ring in his second year in the league. It was the old, Cal Ripken, Juan Soto, they get the ring right away, and then it just doesn't happen again. Got it his second year in the league, and then he'd been to a couple of other finals. He'd endured some heartbreak in Boston, some at the hands of the Panthers, some at the hands of the St. Louis Blues, other teams. And he was kind of a win it for that guy because it had been a long time.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's also just a vote of confidence for the Panthers, Jeff Petry signing with them. And I got to give a shout out to Nate Schmidt's wife, Allie Schmidt, who was awesome when she was here. Their little son, Harv, is one of our favorite people.
You could tell they just came to the rink and just enjoyed being around.
They enjoyed it every
day.
They
watched practice and just took it all in.
She went on a podcast recently hosted by Jeff Petry's wife, who co-hosted with, I believe, Tyler Toffoli's wife. And she went on it and she gave, obviously, Panthers a ton of praise, the organization a ton of love. We love that. We're going to miss those guys. But she was saying, when they were thinking about where to sign in the offseason, she was like, Nate, they just won the cup. Who went? You're asking them to win it back-to-back. I know you want it. I don't know if that's going to happen just based on history. Of course, they come and we go back-to-back. Jeff Petry's signing here looking for that cup thinking the Panthers are going to three-peat. He believes in it. A lot of people do, obviously. But that's a vote of confidence from Jeff Petry saying, I know these guys just won 2, but I think this is still my best chance to win a cup is going for the three-peat with these guys. So great stuff from Jeff Petry. And like you said, now we officially got a win it for that guy here with the Panthers for the upcoming season.
Yep, you got to have those. You got to have those. So and you always need, especially on defense, Veteran defense comes in handy, especially when you get into big games, which the Panthers expect to play. And Jeff Petry has played in big games on the international stage. He's been involved in playoff runs. He was on the Montreal Canadiens when they made their run. It feels like it was just yesterday, but getting to be a few years ago now. But he's played in a lot of big games over the course of his career. And as we always say, I know it's easy to, here in the middle of July, look at a roster on paper and say, here's what it's going to look like, and this is what it needs to look like, and these are the combinations you need to have. Folks, it's the middle of July. And when you expect to have to go through, if you want to win a Stanley Cup, you expect to have to endure regular season and playoffs somewhere in the neighborhood of 105 games or so over the course of the year. You're going to need the full boat. You're going to need everybody. You're going to need your depth to come in handy. And Jeff Petry gives the Panthers good depth on defense. And you look at the Panthers' blue line now, and you feel pretty good about those 7 guys that are under contract.
Yeah, and you look at what Petry did last year with the Red Wings, played in 44 games, 8 points, 1 goal, 7 assists, only a -2. I know we don't look
on a non-playoff team.
On a non-playoff team. I know we usually don't give too much power to plus-minus unless we're talking about Gustav Forsling's plus $1 million, because that is an extreme outlier. But still, to have only a -2 on a team like that's impressive
on
stuff.
A non-playoff team where the goalies, the team save percentage wasn't off the charts.
But my thing is, if Jeff Petry comes here in this upcoming season, gives us that exact stat line, I'm fine with that exact stat line.
Yep.
Panthers are winning with that stat line.
He'll take that, and he'll be well over his 1,000 game plateau if he plays in that number of games, and we'll wait and see how things play out. But a good depth signing, and by all accounts, a good guy coming into the dressing room as well.
So, Doug, to go from a guy who's 37 to now a guy who's 22, and let's see, he is 921 games away from his 1,000th game. So, we're not planning it yet. But I think it's going to come someday.
I think he'll have one someday.
So Mackie Samoskevich the other day signs 1-year deal to come back to the Panthers. He was an RFA, a 10.2 RFA, which means wasn't eligible for an offer sheet. Panthers didn't have to worry about that.
I think these contracts, a lot of folks look for clarification when it comes to the way these aren't your conventional free agent contracts.
Didn't have arbitration rights, couldn't take the Panthers to arbitration. Honestly, he's not even... he's still not eligible for waivers either, so he could be sent up and down without having to worry about getting claimed. So people forget how young Mackie is and how he actually hasn't been around that long.
That was only his first full NHL season last year.
So in terms of service time, he's only got 1 year of service time now in the books because the year before he played 7 games. So Mackie's still very young, got a one-way deal with the Panthers. That's big for a guy who's, like you said, 22 and only played his first season last year. He's making league minimum, but he's making it guaranteed next season with the Panthers, which is awesome. So he's happy. Not that Mackie needs things to be happy. I think he's one of the happiest guys we've met.
Always happy.
The vibes are always good with Mackie, but he's a guy that you go through last year, played in 72 games during the regular season, which is awesome. Got in 4 games in the playoffs, which is huge experience for him. We talked to him throughout the run, even when he was scratched. He was just so happy to be there, so happy to take it all in and absorb, because this is a guy that watched the Panthers the 2 previous years, as a Black Ace, just watching kind of through the glass, not being able to get in there and be a part of things, but getting so excited that, this is his team, this is his organization. But a guy now that I think both you and I know we talked about it during the regular season at points, but Mackie, even at 22 years old, 72 games in the books, and he scored 15 goals in those 72 games last year, was, among the top in the NHL among rookies. And a guy that I think if you would have put him on the top line and top power play of a bad team in the NHL, would have been, top 5 for Calder. He has the skills.
The 15 goals for him, I don't have it right in front of me. I know there are people that run these kind of numbers, but if you were to prorate that over, a few more minutes of ice time every night, or as you said, a few more minutes of power play time, 20 goals would have been a shoo-in for him.
And with his shot, he's got that ability. So we know that's there. And the Panthers, obviously, last year at times put him on that second line with Bennett and Tkachuk. We only saw it a little bit due to injuries.
They liked it.
But it looked really good. But he's a guy that I think when you look at Mackie last year, what impressed me most is, one, it's his attitude, like we talked about. He's got a great attitude. But 2, all those games he played on the fourth line.
I was going to say it was the most valuable thing for him last year.
Loved it. There was games in this season where, he led this team in hits from the fourth line. And this is a guy that's, 5'11", 180. You're not usually asking him to do that, but you don't have to ask him. He's going to do it anyway. He wants to do it. So those games he cut his teeth in the fourth line, I think he's going to look back 10 years from now and be like, man, those were so important.
It was about half a season. It was at least up through Christmas. And for a guy like him, his whole life, he was every team he ever played on, minor hockey into college, everywhere he's ever been, he was relied upon for offense.
Yeah.
And never really had to be the lunch pail, hard hat kind of guy on the fourth line, but coming into the NHL to learn those traits and learn what it took to be in the lineup every night, play the fourth line role, do the little things. Because when you're playing in that role, a lot of times what you do, it adds up to team success. You do a lot of things that don't necessarily show up on the score sheet in the box score. A lot of that's going to go a long way for him long-term in his career. I think 8-10 years from now, he's still going to be employing lessons every single day, things he learned just playing with, whether it was Nosek or Greer or Gadjevich or whoever it might have been on that fourth line.
And you talk about the moments from this year. I go back to like late October on Long Island, his first NHL goal. You talk about the fourth line. Remember, Uvis was on
assisted by forward Uvis Balinskis, correct?
No. So Uvis was on the ice.
He was on the ice. Didn't get an assist.
Cooley
he was on the
assisted,
ice.
And Spencer Knighter assisted.
Yes, but Uvis was on the ice
Uvis
as a
was
line
on the
mate.
fourth line with him that night, and they had a great photo after the game. But I remember Mackie's family, not extended family, he had like 10 people in the crowd there for his first goal just by chance because they're in the Northeast in the area, close to where he's from up there in Connecticut. So that was awesome, but a guy that I think is only going to keep getting better, a guy that I think we're so impressed by already, and I was alluding to it earlier, but you and I talked about it earlier in the season, but he's a guy that you watch him this year and you're like, okay, he's an NHL player. Some guys, it takes you a couple of years to be like, I don't know. Mackie right away, you're like, all right, NHL player. If you asked him to play 82 a season for the next 10 years, he's giving you 82 a season for the next 10 years. So looking forward to seeing what he does this year. Obviously, the Panthers, he's going to be fighting for that ice time again with how deep this team is, but he's a guy that's going to make an impact. He's going to be a great teammate, and I see big goals in his future, and I also see eventually, the caps going up a lot. Panthers are going to have a lot of cap space next offseason. I see, Mackie eventually getting that bigger deal, obviously, when when the time comes.
And I know that why Bill Zito should have won the GM of the Year award is the topic of an episode. That could be a whole episode standalone
later in the season,
special
when we run
in and of itself. But another reason, if we need anything else to pad Bill Zito's body of work, I know the Panthers have opted to trade first-round picks quite a bit lately, and it's been with good results. But Bill Zito's made 2 first-round picks as the general manager of the Florida Panthers, and they were Anton Lundell and Mackie Samoskevich.
Yep.
And neither one was a top 10 pick. In the case of Mackie, it wasn't a top 20 pick. And look at these two guys. They're every night NHLers, and both have extremely bright futures still ahead of them, and they both have Stanley Cup rings now. And again, to illustrate it, I'm sure everybody saw this by now, but it just shows when you trade draft picks the way things can play out. But that first round pick, well, we talked about it in the last episode, Potter, who the Flames took. The Panthers have been to the Cup final 3 times and won 2 Stanley Cups since the Matthew Tkachuk trade. Finally, Calgary made the first-round pick that they got from the Panthers, the 32nd overall pick. Yeah. They finally made that selection. Kind of brings closure to that trade.
Yeah, and like we always say, fortune favors the bold, and there's few GMs more bold than Bill Zito. And I think I look forward to the eventual 30 for 30 about the Tkachuk trade and just how seismic that was, not only for the Panthers and the success they had, and obviously, what it's done for Matthew Tkachuk as well, who said time and time again it changed his entire life, obviously.
And we know Paul Maurice would have some great anecdotes there too, because he loves to tell the story about how he was interviewing assistant coaches and he had just talked to Sylvain Lefebvre when they were assembling, when Paul Maurice was assembling his coaching staff here, because he had just taken the job, and Bill Zito spoke to Paul Maurice and said he had a chance to potentially acquire Matthew Tkachuk.
My perspective, because even I loved it, because I obviously you get wind early in the day, be by your computer, and I just remember for an hour before it went out, I'm just sitting at my computer with the press release built out on the website, just waiting to hit send, and I'm like, it's like your fingers on a bomb. The world is going to go crazy the moment this goes out. It was so fun, but it brings us to our next topic, Doug. So like we said, that we're going to get deeper into some team assessments as we get closer to training camps and things like that, because how teams are now is probably not, well, not probably not, but a lot of teams should probably make a couple more moves before the season starts, or whether that's a trade, whether that's maybe another free agent signing, things like that. But obviously a lot of moves have happened both in free agency and the days following. So I just want your thoughts on this as we kind of look at the upcoming season. Obviously the Panthers are the big dog. Everyone's trying to take down the Panthers here, stop that three-peat. I don't want to look too much at the West, because the West really doesn't matter. It's just one team. You only have to worry about one team in the West, and it's the team you face in the final. I do want to mention the Oilers for a second. towards the end because everyone assumes it's going to be Panthers-Oilers Part 3, at least from the betting lines I see. But I'm curious, in the East, maybe even particularly the Atlantic, but in the East, who do you think now is maybe best suited to challenge the Panthers based on the moves they've made here, being a year older, all that stuff? I got a couple.
So if I'm looking at the teams that could challenge I'll say this right now. The date of our recording right now, July 11th, 7-Eleven.
Oh, I got a Slurpee after this.
It is
Slurpee.
It is Slurpee Day. Yes, there is some kind of promotion in regards to that.
Free small Slurpee, I believe.
Here on July the 11th, not just in the Eastern Conference, but across the entirety of the National Hockey League, even though they've won 2 cups, been to 3 straight finals, in a league with a salary cap where parity and competitive balance are always front and center, and it feels like the system is designed to make this more and more difficult each year. Here we are on July 11th, and I feel pretty confident saying, on paper, which doesn't always matter, but when the group on paper has accomplished what this one has, this Panthers team is the best roster in the National Hockey League. It still is. It was on June 17th when the Panthers won the Stanley Cup. It's still the best roster in the National Hockey League here on July 11th. And
I don't think anyone in hockey is going to argue with you.
Barring something unforeseen, this will be the best roster going into the 25-26 season. And I know my friend Mick Kern on SiriusXM NHL Network Radio, they hit the air in 2005, going into the 05-06 season. They hit the air, and he says that in the time that they've been on the air, he just said this on the air the other day, said in the time that they've been on the air, he believes that this Panthers team has the best chance to three-peat of the other teams who've gone back-to-back in, again, the time that they've been on the air. The Lightning a few years back, the Penguins a little bit before that. He thinks this Panthers team has the best chance. Is it difficult? It's extremely difficult. There are 31 other teams trying to win the Stanley Cup.
Especially with the Olympics and the Panthers having a lot of Olympians, we imagine, given how good they are.
Yes, there are a lot of factors, and there's a lot that can come into place the next 6, 8, 9 months or so as things unfold. But if we're looking at who is going to challenge the Panthers, it's hard to not think of, and I know the Panthers took care of them pretty quickly. It's hard to not think of the Tampa Bay Lightning first. And I know that the Lightning, they went to 3 straight finals. Then the Panthers went to 3 straight finals. They're still coached by John Cooper. They still have and will have arrested Andrei Vasilevsky in net. They still have top-end players in their prime, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Jake Gensel. Folks, I don't need to tell you all about them. Victor Hedman is still really good. On paper, at full health, which Tampa Bay did, they were without Bjorkstrand. They hope to have him for the new season. Anthony Cirelli is really good. They still have a very good team, and I have a hard time not thinking of them first if I'm thinking of the most formidable challengers to the Panthers.
So as you look at them this offseason, so they brought in Pontus Holmberg, they brought in Jacob Pelletier, lost Nick Perbix. So on defense, maybe a little bit thinner. Not that I like Nick Perbix, but he's not.
And he was. I think he might have even been scratched again.
They didn't lose an ultimate game changer or anything. But you look at them down the middle, and I think for them, it's everyone's a year older. Kucherov's a year older. Not that I think it's going to matter for him. Hedman's a year older. That might matter. A lot of miles.
That could
on those
matter.
tires.
He plays a lot.
But more than anything, and I know the Panthers have had his number lately, but Andrei Vasilevsky is still Andrei Vasilevsky, and their roster is good enough that if he's in elite mode, they can beat anyone.
And they're healthy. If they're healthy.
And I think the other thing that really matters to me is you go down the middle. I think they're the one team in the Atlantic that don't match up directly, but probably the closest thing to the Panthers in terms of just strength down the middle, because you got Point, you got Cirelli, you got Paul, and you got Gord. That's 4 strong centermen down the middle. A lot of teams only have 2, some have 3. I think they're the only team like the Panthers that have 4 guys down the middle where I'm like, all right, all 4 of those are guys.
Yeah.
And they can match up. So do I think those 4 guys are better than the Panthers down the middle? No, but I think they're as close as anyone else is in the Atlantic. So,
everybody else all the other teams are at least maybe on their 3rd or 4th line. They're all drawing somebody out of a hat somewhere, just hoping for something.
As we
to go
through this too, got to point out by the time you get to the playoffs, somebody's missing somebody with an injury. Something's happened. Somebody makes a big deal at the deadline, so we can't get too crazy with it. We're just basing it off right now what we see. But Doug, you said the Lightning. I agree on the Lightning. As I look to the Rangers, they added Gavrikov, they added Scott Morrow, Radish, but I think for them, I just still think they're a little too broken.
They're a wild card, but I don't think this is the year.
No, I don't think they're back on track yet. You look at Boston, they added Arvidsson, they added Tanner Jeannot, they added Corrali, they added Esamont. Good players to add, depth players, but once again, I just don't think they're still in kind of reset mode especially after losing Brad Marchand to the Panthers. Yes, you have, Pasternak. Yes, you have Charlie McAvoy, but I still feel like they're missing a couple.
And Swayman will have a training camp,
positions,
but they would need Jeremy Swayman to have a Vezina type of year to keep them in the hunt, I think.
Yeah, so my question there is obviously you lost Marchand, who was such a culture guy there. Is this the year, and it started last year, but is this the year where they don't look like the Bruins anymore? They have to kind of maybe find a new identity because now they're so far removed from the Marchand, Krejci, Chara, Bergeron.
There's a new head coach there. Yeah. It might be a transition type of season.
So I think, I got a couple of teams to talk about, but to me, I'll follow yours up with after the Lightning, the team I think that next in the Atlantic, maybe the East overall, but definitely the Atlantic, I think is going to be there and be in the fight. And for me, Doug, that's the Montreal Canadiens. And you and I both picked them to take a step forward last year. They did. They made the playoffs. And when I look at what they did this offseason, Noah Dobson, great ad for them. Obviously,
I liked that.
He's going to be, running probably PP2 for them because I think you maybe want Hudson on PP1. Maybe he's PP1. I don't know. But regardless.
I liked Dobson at 9.5 better than Bouchard at 10.4.
So did I, 1,000%. And we'll get to that in a minute. But the Bolduc trade was great. I think he's going to be a nice big piece for them. On the wings, he'll matter. You lost Emil Heineman, Mr. Trade Piece, getting traded everywhere. But he's a good player.
He is. He's effective.
He's an NHL player. But it's funny that he's just his trade tree.
Another guy Bill Zito found.
Yep. His trade tree is going to be fun over the years. But I look at them, Doug, and I look at that lineup as it stands now, and even just like the top line, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky, that's a really good top line. I like that top line. It's all young guys that are now a year older, getting better. We talk about the Lightning a year older being a bad thing for a lot of guys. The Canadiens are the complete opposite, where a year older is great for all these guys. Second line, if you have Line A, maybe Doc, and then Demidov, a full year of him. Liked him for what we saw in his initial kind of NHL preview there.
The Canadiens haven't had a guy with the hype of Demidov in a really long time.
Yeah. But you go down the middle with them, and it's Suzuki, it's Doc, Newhook, probably Jake Evans as the 4C. On defense, Gould, Dobson, Hudson, Struble. Not enough people talk about Struble. I like Struble as a player.
He's a good player.
But obviously, Hudson stole a lot of the spotlight there as kind of the up-and-coming young defenseman. But then maybe you have Mike Matheson on your third pair now, which, like we talked about, a lot of teams are overpaying for third pair guys, but if you have Matheson on your third pair, it's a great guy to have on your third pair, as we all know from his days here with the Panthers.
And his contract's it's not an anchor.
Not an anchor by any means, no. And they can do that because all these other guys are still pretty young. But what impresses me most about them, it makes me think that they could just be there in the hunt, is those young guys, is the fact they made it to the playoffs last year. They had a good series, and I think the real question mark, obviously, they're not as deep down the middle as some other teams. I think they're better than some other teams, but they're not there with the Lightning and the Panthers. But for me, it's going to come down to Montembeault, who's already established himself as a good NHL goaltender, which is awesome. We loved watching his trajectory from his time here with the Panthers to now. But am I picking him over a lot of other goaltenders in the net come playoff time? I'm not. And they get a goaltender. Maybe he takes a step forward this year. He's good enough to get them to the playoffs. Is he good enough to win them series after series after series? I don't know yet. That's a question mark.
Or maybe somebody else emerges as the guy.
But last one I'll say, and this I think was proven last year in the playoffs with how good he was in that first round series. But Nick Suzuki is a dog, and like the Panthers say, Panthers are all dogs. You got to have dogs, and I think he is one of the bigger dogs in the East now, outside of the Panthers. And I think he's a guy where, Doug, if I'm drafting 1Cs in the Atlantic, I'm taking Barkov 1. I'm taking Suzuki 2 these days, and I'm talking for guys that I think I can win with in the playoffs. I'm taking him over Austin Matthews. I'm taking him over Braden Point. I think Nick Suzuki's that good come playoff time.
If I'm looking at full body of work and a guy that I need come playoff time, I'm looking at him next to Braden Point, and I'm looking at him above Austin Matthews at this point in time.
And obviously we know Austin Matthews is an elite talent, but now the track record of
Austin Matthews could score 60 goals again.
Yeah, but the track record in the playoffs now is long enough that you have stuff to go off of.
And Nick Suzuki has become a point-per-game player with all the intangibles, and the other immeasurable part of this, part you can't quantify, is clearly the Montreal Canadiens, his teammates, fall in line behind him. Clearly they respect the guy wearing the C on the jersey. You can tell. And I'm not saying that the other teams don't. I'm just saying you look at this young Montreal team, and a lot of times a young team looks for somebody that they can follow. Well, they have their guy. Yeah. Montreal's got their guy. So that's I like them more than Ottawa at this stage, and I think I like them more than the Leafs at this point in time. And you mentioned Sam Montembeault, and is he in the top tier? I wouldn't put him there as much as we do at times have the soft spot for Sam Montembeault, going back to, when he was a guy in development camps here with the Panthers going way back. I don't put him in the top tier by any means. That being said, this is going to be the most seasoned overall group and the best defense core that he will have played behind as a Montreal Canadian. And there's no doubt that should positively impact his play overall too.
Yeah, so do I think they can beat the Panthers? No, but I think they're one of the better teams in the East now.
And they have some X factors. If Demidov comes out and is outstanding out of the gate,
could be,
which is entirely possible. This is a guy that, again, they haven't had a high upside prospect like this in Montreal in quite some time. That's one to watch. That could take them. That could push them into an elite tier if he comes out all of a sudden and is somebody who looks like a 30-plus goal guy right out of the gate.
And also for them, this is also a team that I think could beat you 7-1 in the regular season, but then you beat them in the playoffs type thing. I still think they're kind of finding that playoff identity, but I think last year making it really gives them a boost heading into this season. Outside of that, though, Doug, I'm looking around. I think Ottawa's going to be good. You add Jordan Spence, you add Lars Eller, you lose Hamonic, Gaudette, and Forsberg, which is, I always liked Forsberg as a backup.
They're better than Detroit and Buffalo. Ottawa's still, I think they're a wild card team again.
They're still a wild card team, and they can still beat you in the playoffs. I mean, you look at the series they had with the Leafs, a lot of overtime losses. Was it three? 3 overtime losses, maybe?
They were close, yeah.
It was a close series. But I'm still not putting them above Montreal in my book. And then, the Maple Leafs. And I think this is the ultimate kind of question mark. This is a team that I think would have loved to have had Aaron Ekblad, would have loved to have had Sam Bennett, would have loved to have had Brad Marchand, didn't get any of them. Panthers kept them all. And because of that, I just think they take a pretty big step back this year. And not
still a playoff team.
Not in terms of standings. I still think they're, like I said, Austin Matthews could give you a 65-goal regular season. It's fine, whatever. But I just think when you lose Mitch Marner, when you run him out of town, and, Pacioretty had some big moments from the playoffs. He's not coming back. Who are the guys you're bringing in? You're bringing in Pizzetta. You're bringing in, Nicholas Waugh, who's a good 3C. He's a good 3C.
Those are both fine fourth line. Waugh could be the third line center or the fourth line center.
And from Utah, you get is it Michelli?
Matthias Michelli, who I think they're probably hoping he's not Mitch Marner. Same initials. Mm-hmm. I think they're hoping that the other MM can maybe be plugged into that exact same spot.
Yeah. He's probably
not he's not a 99-point guy or whatever Marner did finish with last year. He's not going to push 100 points, but I think they're hoping that Matthias Michelli playing with top-end players like that is going to be able to produce. And he played with some good offensive players in Utah and Arizona going back, but I think they're hoping at this stage that he could fill the Marner spot and at least play the part for them.
And Matthew Nyes is a year older, and I think you and I both said last year during the playoffs, I think he kind of looks like, or at least was last year, kind of their best playoff guy with the size he has.
That could be a 40-goal player.
His ability gets the net. He was doing some great screens on Bob in that series. But if I look at this team, even with another full year of, they have a really good 1-2 in net with Stolarz and Wool. Like, that's going to get them through. That's going to help you in the playoffs, too.
At full health.
At full health. But I look at this team, and I just don't – I see a good team again, but I just don't think you lose Mitch Marner and are somehow a better team. Even though Marner was not performing in the playoffs as much as they would have liked, not really anyone on that team is, Doug, especially like we said, Austin Matthews. So I just don't see them being as good, even though they gave the Panthers the toughest challenge last year. They were almost up 3-0 on the Panthers, and now I think they're taking a little bit of a step back.
Johnny T went back at a discount.
At a discount. Doesn't care about taxes, apparently.
Taxes. It's funny how taxes don't come up in that conversation.
But other than that, Doug, in the East, I look around like the Hurricanes. The Miller, the trade for Keandre Miller, was interesting. You bring in Ehlers, who I think in great player, but in next year's free agency class, he'd be kind of behind several guys. Where this year was a very thin class. He was kind of the toast of the town in terms of free agents.
Once Marner was off the table, that was the guy they had to get.
If you needed a scoring winger, you kind of wanted Ehlers or bust. And the Hurricanes got him. And they lost Brent Burns. They lost Orlov. Both those guys getting a little old, though, so I think they'll be fine on the back end structure, especially with that structure they have, Doug. But to me, the thing holding back the Hurricanes, I look at this going down the middle. You got Aho, And then your 2C's Kakaniemi, your 3C's probably Jordan Stahl, who's not getting any younger. And then Jankowski, he's fine, but your 4C. But as we saw in the playoffs last year, you're not going to win with that kind of center depth. Doesn't matter if you have Ehlers on the wing, doesn't matter.
Their second and fourth line centers are basically the default options. And they're going to have to address that.
Yeah.
They're absolutely going to have to address that.
They need a Bill Zito level trade to bring in a legitimate 1C or
and those guys just weren't there.
Yeah.
They could have gone and overpaid for Pius Suter or something like that, but that's not going to fix it either. So Aho's fine in that spot. Jordan Stahl's fine in that spot for now.
Yeah.
But you can't bank on that into the future. He's fine. Their first line center, their third line centers are fine, but they're going to have to address that second line center position.
And you really wonder.
And that's the guy who's going to be playing with Nick Ehlers.
Yeah, or Ehlers could be on the top line. You move Svechnikov down to the
potentially. Yep.
Sure, we'll see both throughout the season. But it's funny. We talk about all these teams needing these pieces. Those pieces weren't there in free agency this year. Is somebody going to swing a big trade, or are a lot of teams going to go into this year saying, this is what we got, we're going to ride it out, because the free agency class next year, at least right now on paper, is massive. There's a ton of big names there. Will they all be there come free agency? No. Some guys will re-up before that. But regardless, there's going to be some huge names available next year with a lot of teams with a lot of cap space. And I don't know. Is this a year, Doug, where a lot of teams just say the Panthers are the best team, we're going to do our best, but we're really going to tool up next year?
And it is interesting because it was the first year in a few of the cap going up significantly, but I think I echo everybody's sentiments in that July 1st was pretty quiet because a lot of guys, in the case of the Panthers stayed with their team.
Panthers ruined it for everyone.
And we had and the Marner thing got done before July 1st. So free agency kind of opened up, and it wasn't quite the Black Friday sale that some people I think always hope that NHL free agency is, with people breaking down the doors and going out and throw. There was still a lot of money thrown around, no doubt about that, but it wasn't quite the extravaganza I think people would have liked it to be.
And last one, Doug. We talked about the East a little bit, and we'll talk about that more as we get closer to training camp, like I said. But I do want to mention the Oilers, just because the Panthers and the Oilers are forever attached to the hip. And you look at what they did this offseason. So far, things can still happen, but you bring in Curtis Lazar, you bring in Andrew Mangiapane. He's a fine player. I like Mangiapane. Great. He can fit in a lot of holes.
He's been to Alberta before.
Can fit in a lot of holes. But you lose Arvidsson, you lose Connor Brown, you lose Klingberg, you lose Evander Kane, you lose Corey Perry. And some of those guys are just names, but some of those guys were important players, though. I mean, Connor Brown's in their top six. Kane, when he was out there, was in their top six. Perry was either on their fourth line or their top line. He was all over the place.
Perry was one of their five best players in the Cup final.
Third most productive forward in the Cup final, maybe. But another year, kind of like the year, last offseason, where they lost depth. They weren't even deep to begin with, and they lost depth players. I don't know how they're going to look again this year. Once again, it's going to be McDavid and Draisaitl taking that team as far as they can, but it's going to be a crazy year for them, because the whole year, I mean, who knows? He could sign tomorrow, but if McDavid is not re-signing and you have the whole year of Willie won't he, that's going to weigh on you, especially in that media market.
It's going to weigh on the whole team.
It's going to weigh on the whole team, and I don't know. Once again, like when the year, I know they got back to the final, and they took the Panthers to 6.
Also not getting younger.
Yeah, and he's a pending. He'll be a free agent after this year. But like last year, they lost Holloway, they lost Broberg, they lost McLeod. I think I'm forgetting one of their Fogle. They lost Fogle.
How good would all four of those guys look on their team right now?
Yeah, and
I know it's impossible.
But everyone at the time said they somehow got better, and I don't think they can do that again this year, losing all those guys and bringing in Lazar and Mangiapane and say maybe they're a better team. They're not, and it's getting harder and harder because now Leon Draisaitl's contract is now kicking up at over $14 million. Bouchard just re-signed for $10.5, and if McDavid re-signs, he's eating up a lot of that new cap coming in, obviously. And
the goalies are still the goalies.
To me, it strikes me as also the polar opposite a little bit of the Panthers, where, say Leon takes 12.5 instead of 14 something. Say McDavid shaves 1.5 to 2 mil off his contract. Say Bouchard shaves a mil 5. You're suddenly creating a really good second line winger for $5-6 million. That can't exist now because no one's taken a pay cut. And to me, Doug, that has nothing to do with taxes, because even you look at the Panthers. And
I'm all for the players go. Your peak earnings window is short.
Do what you want.
Make as much as you can.
Do what you want. But I also think there's a thing where kind of like Brad Marchand took a pay cut during his time in Boston, hoping for that team to build.
And Bergeron did, and Chara did, and
Crosby and Malkin and those guys do it every year. Letang, just trying to build around.
Tom Brady did forever.
Tom Brady did. But I just don't think any of those guys trust things up there enough to know if we take that cut, this team is going to build the team around me we think they can build. Whereas, the moment Ekblad takes less, the moment, Brad Marchand takes less, the moment all those guys take less, they know exactly where that money's going. And it's going to keep the band together. It's going to sign those guys. And even though they might not know where it's going directly, if I take this, we're definitely signing Marchand. They know, if I leave this mill on the table, I know Billy Z is going to do something great with that $1 million. And you even leave out little things like all these people taking pay cuts. That's how you pay for Thomas Nosek again.
Yeah, that's how you get Thomas Nosek back for a year.
And I just think
was it a 1 year?
1 year.
Yep.
That really, it requires a lot of trust. It's built over time. Obviously, already having one definitely helps because you're just trying to keep winning now. But I just think the Oilers are kind of stuck now in a thing where they didn't win when these guys were on team-friendly deals. All the team-friendly deals are gone now. Even with the cap going up, what are you going to do?
Well, they've gone from
But those two guys can still carry you back to the final.
They've gone from surrounding McDavid and Draisaitl with a bunch of young guys to surrounding them with a bunch of veterans to now it's kind of going back the other way again because they still have Matthew Savoy, maybe a opportunity, or they just made that trade for Isaac Howard from the Lightning.
It sounds like he's going to play day one.
And maybe he steps right into not because we're going to give him a chance to, but because he almost has to.
Yep.
So they're in that boat with some of these guys. So that's gonna bear watching going into the year. But I'm with you on that. I can't at this point honestly look at Edmonton's roster and say top to bottom it's better than what they just had. And I don't think the one they just had was better than the one they had the year before.
And with that, Doug, we're not going to dive deeper into these teams yet, but I think just initially right now, July 11th, 2025, I'm picking Vegas probably to come out of the West. The Marner trade's big, even though you're losing Pietrangelo. They always find a way. That D-core is really deep. And once again, you know what? Two teams that take big swings all the time, the Panthers and the Knights, and they're always back there in the final.
The teams that take the biggest swings, we've talked about this. Who are the teams that take the biggest swings going back the last half a decade? It's the Panthers, it's Vegas, it's Tampa Bay, it's Colorado, and all those teams have Stanley Cups recently.
And I will say that we talk about the drama of McDavid, but if you get halfway through the season, your team's okay, but you think McDavid might not be resigning or not 100% sold, you could, if you pulled off the correct trade, you could move him and build an incredible team around Leon Draisaitl. If you found the right trade partner and you had the guts to make the move, and knowing that you just made potentially the worst move of all time or the potentially the best move of all time,
and you found a team that was willing to invest 15 to 18% of their payroll into one guy.
Yeah, and some teams can.
Yeah,
depending on where they are at in their build right now. So, like I said, big swings don't always work out. Big swings cost you your job a lot of the time, but you know what? Not taking big swings also can cost you your job a lot of time when you're an NHL general manager. So,
if you're the GM that trades Connor McDavid and it doesn't work, you probably aren't going to be welcome back in that town.
So I think
there's a lot on the line.
There's a lot on the line. But I just think, especially with next year's free agent class supposedly being great, depending on who makes it there, I just think this year's going to be a very interesting year from teams that are trying very hard right now versus teams that are already planning ahead to next offseason.
Yeah, I think Washington will be good again.
They'll be good.
Can they duplicate what they did?
I don't think so.
Not.
No.
Columbus, I think, will be better.
Step forward, yeah.
They made strides, and I think they'll continue to. They have a lot of young guys that I really like on that team. We'll see how things shake out in net for them. But I expect the East to actually look a bit similar year over year, with maybe Montreal and Columbus taking steps forward. But wait and see. We have lots of time to dissect all that as we get further along. But we'll look more at the overall full league picture as we get closer to the season. It is still just July 11th, a little premature for that. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Territory Talk podcast, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. Again, if you have any topics, questions, anything you want to bring to the table, at Doug Plagans, at Jameson Coop on the Twitter X platform. But until next time, folks, this has been Territory Talk for Jameson Olive. I'm Doug Plagans. We'll talk to you next time.